In this session, I want to walk through some tips and tricks for the chat functionality in Microsoft Teams. Beyond just creating one-on-one chats or chats with multiple users, I want to show some of the functions that exist to make you a little bit more productive, specifically around the persistent chat that lives within meetings and teams and channels. So if you see, I'm currently on a screen for a status call that happened earlier today, and there were meeting notes that were created, and the meeting ended shortly after it started. But there's a persistent chat that lives within that. Let's say this is a recurring meeting. Maybe it's going to happen every morning or every Friday afternoon. Weekly sales calls are a great example, or just internal huddles now that everyone's working remotely or from home. I want to pin this conversation to make sure that it's up at the top of my list and I don't have to scroll through all of these historical chats in order to find the important ones. So I simply click on the ellipses or the three dots on the end of this conversation and I click pin. And that pulls it up to my pinned chats. It acts like the favorite functionality in the old Skype for Business world. So it doesn't necessarily need to be an individual or a group of people. It can be a recurring call that I do choose to pin. As I move over to the teams and channels, I want to show a few things within the chat functionality that are pretty powerful. You see Isaiah over here has left a message in German for us. And in a global organization, this could happen quite frequently. So instead of requiring everyone to use the same language, a nice option is to just use the translate feature. Again, I hover over the message and use the ellipses to find this. And there's a translate option. And when I click on that, it takes his text and translate it for our US-based folks directly into English. And we can respond in English, and he'd be able to translate that back into German if he so chooses. You can always translate that back into its original message, and you can even use Immersive Reader. Immersive Reader is a nice way to draw out for the audio visually impaired the ability to enlarge the text and also verbalize it. So someone could read off of automated AI can read that message directly to you. Another option within here that you noticed was the ability to save that message. When you save a message, what it does is it saves that under your profile. You see in the top right, for you to read at a later date. Like if I go into my user profile, I can go into our saved messages, and you'll see any messages that I saved maybe throughout the week that I wanted to read over the weekend. Maybe they were longer reads that I wanted to save for later in the day when I had some time to focus. And this pulls me directly to that message that I had saved in context through that additional chat. And when I'm done, I can unsave that message and it goes away. So I'll jump back to that team that I was working within. There's a couple ways to start a conversation. Obviously, the chat function we all know and love. One of the base functionalities within Microsoft Teams, however, would be the @mentioning. And if you're not familiar with this is a great way to draw the attention of specific employees or coworkers or entire teams. You can @mention a team or a channel so everyone assigned to that team gets a notification within their team's tenant. I'm going to just mention a couple folks here. You see when I @mention, I get a couple suggestions already. I'll add Adele. I'll actually backspace once, and that just deletes her last name, so it reads a little more naturally. And so I can say, Adele, can you please update the digital assets, since that's the channel we're on. And I'll send that message. So now Adele has a notification letting her know that I've assigned this task to her within this channel. Another way I can format messages is hovering over this A, the first option we have in the bottom is a format. And when I open that up, I see some functionality that I would assume to have in like a Microsoft Word application. I can create paragraphs, I can add color, I can bold or underline or italicize. I can really add a form and function to this message that draws people's attention, on top of the option of marking this as important. So what marking as important does is not just label it as important, but draws it out with this red color that really catches your attention. And maybe I want something even more than a conversation. This is going to be an announcement. So now I have within this announcement the ability to create a large headline that grabs everyone's attention. I can add a subtitle. I'm not very creative, so it's a big announcement. And then I'll type in all my details here. Let's say this is for a use case. Let's say this is a HR announcement. And maybe I don't want everyone replying to this thread. Maybe I want replies coming directly to my HR manager and not for the entire team to see. Across the top, you have the option where everyone can reply by default, or you can select through the drop down just yourself and the moderators, which is most likely going to be a much smaller group of users on this channel. Only yourself and the moderators can reply. And then this is the digital assets web team. But what if there were another team where I needed to make this announcement to, and they live in separate channels within my Teams tenant? Quite simply, I can say post in multiple channels. I no longer have to recreate this announcement with the same form and function in a different channel. I can just use this option on the right here and select additional channels, and it'll expose all of the teams and channels within my tenant already. And let's say the sales and marketing team could need this announcement as well. We'll just hit update. And when I click send, you notice this has really grabbed the attention of my users now as opposed to just a regular chat. So this announcement, as they scroll up through a persistent chat history, is really going to get more attention. And then on that sales and marketing team, you can see there was an important announcement posted through that exclamation point, and there it is in a second location as well. So hopefully you find these little tips and tricks useful. I recommend you go back and use them. The important thing to note too is under the important announcements, you can also define messages or announcements as urgent. A caveat to that is an urgent message will actually ping your users every 2 minutes until they acknowledge it. So urgent really should say something like the building is on fire. Urgent shouldn't necessarily say, there's cold cuts in the kitchen. Everyone hurry up before they run out. That might get a little aggressive for your users. So buyer beware on the urgent level, but the important label is very helpful. So hopefully you guys found these tips helpful. Have a great day.